Welcome to the Books by Barron Podcast, where we take the time to sit with ideas, not rush past them. I'm Isabella Pierce, and it's an honor to be hosting a space dedicated to thoughtful conversation, reflection, and clarity. Here, we slow the pace, listen closely, and explore the choices, stories, and questions that shape who we become. Today, we're joined by Dr. Willie Timmons, a psychologist and author of the book Running in the Dark, which is a psychological thriller that moves beyond suspense. Dr. Timmons brings a rare perspective fury, blending clinical insight with storytelling fury, inviting readers to confront what they run from and why. This conversation isn't about fear alone. It's about what happens when we finally stop running. Dr. Timmons, welcome to the Books by Barron podcast.
Yeah.
And it's truly a pleasure having you with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me in the studio, Willie.
Yeah.
I'm excited to explore your work and insights.
Well, sure.
Before we begin, I just want to say how honored I am to have this conversation with you.
Your work has sparked important conversations, and I'm grateful you're here to share your perspective with us. I've been looking forward to discussing running in the dark and the psychological layers that make this story resonate deeply.
There's a quiet intensity in your writing that invites readers to sit with discomfort, curiosity, and unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Let's begin by talking about what inspired this story and how fear became such a powerful force within it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Isabella. It's an honor to be here discussing this story and connecting with thoughtful readers today together now.
Yes.
I'm excited to explore the psychology behind fear, truth, and choices that shape characters throughout Running in the Dark novel. This conversation matters because stories reveal how people respond when certainty fades and pressure exposes our deepest motivations within us.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to discuss my work openly and reflect on questions readers continue asking after finishing the book.
Thank you, William. Your insights set the stage perfectly for discussing fear, motivation, and truth within the story today together. I'd love to begin by exploring what first sparked the idea behind Running in the Dark for you initially, personally.
The idea emerged from observing how people behave when fear clouds judgment and forces decisions under extreme emotional pressure situations.
Yeah.
I wanted readers to feel uncertainty alongside characters, questioning motives, truth, and themselves as the story unfolds gradually over time.
Yeah.
Writing the novel allowed me to examine fear as both a threat and catalyst for growth and revelation within people.
That tension really stays with readers, especially how fear pushes characters to confront truths they've avoided for so long.
Yeah.
Your approach makes fear feel intimate, almost familiar, which deepens the emotional connection throughout the narrative significantly. As a psychologist, how did your professional background influence the emotional realism and behavioral choices within this story?
My clinical experience helped ground characters emotionally, ensuring their reactions felt authentic when fear disrupted logic and sense of safety. I wanted readers to recognize familiar emotional patterns, even in extreme situations, because fear rarely announces itself loudly. Psychology reminds us that truth often emerges under pressure, revealing who we are when control quietly slips away.
That perspective adds depth, showing fear as subtle, persistent, and shaping decisions long before characters realize its influence fully emerges. Readers often mention lingering unease. How did you balance suspense with empathy while guiding them through uncertainty and moral complexity? As tension builds, what do you hope readers ultimately carry with them after closing the final page and reflect afterward?
My goal was never comfort, but honesty, allowing readers to sit with discomfort and discover insight through reflection. I hope readers leave questioning their assumptions, recognizing how fear shapes choices, relationships, and truth in their own lives. If the story lingers, prompting conversation and introspection,
then it has fulfilled its purpose beyond entertainment alone. That intention is powerful, Willie, because stories that linger often become mirrors for readers confronting their own fears and truths. Running in the Dark draws readers into a world where fear operates quietly, shaping decisions long before danger becomes visible. What makes this story compelling is how psychological tension builds internally internally, forcing characters to confront truths they've avoided. Rather than relying on shock, the novel invites reflection, asking readers to examine how fear influences choices in their own lives.
I wanted the fear to feel familiar.
Right.
Because real anxiety rarely announces itself loudly before influencing our choices every day. The characters struggle internally, and that inner conflict mirrors how people wrestle with truth under pressure in real life situations.
Right.
I drew heavily from psychology to ensure reactions felt authentic, especially when fear distorted perception and judgment during intense moments. My hope was readers would recognize themselves in these moments, questioning how they might respond differently when fear takes control. Writing the story allowed me to explore vulnerability, reminding us courage often begins with honest self-examination in difficult personal moments. Ultimately, I wanted the novel to spark conversation, encouraging reflection long after the final page ends for thoughtful, engaged readers.
What stands out is how fear operates subtly, shaping identity and decisions before characters realize its influence, making the story deeply relatable. Your emphasis on psychological authenticity reminds readers that courage isn't absence of fear, but awareness and intentional response under pressure. That balance between vulnerability and insight elevates the novel, transforming suspense into reflection that lingers well beyond the final page. You speak about fear shaping perception, which raises questions about identity and how people recognize themselves under prolonged psychological strain. I'm curious how you see truth evolving in the story, especially when characters must choose between comfort, honesty, and self-preservation. As readers follow these choices, what deeper understanding do you hope emerges about human behavior when certainty dissolves completely?
Truth in the story shifts as characters lose certainty, revealing how identity fractures when safety conflicts with honesty and moral responsibility. When certainty dissolves, behavior becomes revealing, showing who we are when familiar structures no longer protect or define us. I wanted readers to feel how self-preservation masquerades as logic, even when instincts quietly recognize uncomfortable underlying truths.
When logic becomes a shield, how do people distinguish between survival instincts and avoidance of truths they already sense internally?
Isabella, when logic becomes a shield, how do you see people separating survival instincts from avoiding truths they already sense? Often survival feels rational, yet prolonged discomfort exposes whether logic protects well-being or simply delays confronting necessary internal change growth. Avoidance usually quiets anxiety temporarily, but truth resurfaces through patterns, relationships, and consequences. Distinguishing the two requires honesty, slowing down reactions, and asking whether choices expand integrity or merely preserve comfort today alone.
I can hear your passion, Willie. If intensity burned calories, we'd both be standing up applauding you right now. But seriously, you're highlighting how avoidance masquerades as logic and how truth always resurfaces through consequences we can't ignore. So my next question is this. How can readers recognize that moment when reflection must replace comfort to grow?
Readers recognize that moment when discomfort stops fading and instead demands attention, signaling growth requires courage rather than avoidance. It often appears when patterns repeat, relationships strain, or inner conflict grows louder despite attempts to rationalize choices away. That pause becomes transformative if people listen honestly, allowing reflection to guide action instead of fear maintaining control.
That idea of listening honestly feels challenging, especially in a world that rewards speed, certainty, and surface-level confidence. Your point reframes discomfort as an invitation rather than a warning, encouraging readers to slow down and question their default reactions. As we continue, I'd like to explore how intentional reflection can realistically be practiced amid everyday pressures and expectations.
Intentional reflection begins with creating small pauses, moments where people resist reacting immediately and instead observe their internal responses. Even brief stillness allows awareness to surface, helping individuals notice patterns, emotional triggers, and motivations driving habitual decisions. Practiced consistently, reflection becomes a discipline, transforming daily pressure into opportunities for clarity, alignment, and conscious choice. In Running in the Dark, the protagonist pauses during a critical decision, realizing logic is masking fear rather than protecting truth. That moment reflects how avoidance feels intelligent, yet the body signals tension, confusion, and unease long before clarity arrives. I included that scene to show readers reflection often begins quietly, before action, in moments others might overlook.
That scene crystallizes the theme, showing how awareness arrives subtly before action. intuition, inviting readers to notice internal signals more clearly. It bridges psychology and narrative, reminding us stories teach reflection by example rather than instruction alone within lived human experience. How can readers practice noticing those signals sooner before fear hardens into rationalized choices daily amid pressure and constant noise?
Readers can begin by slowing reactions, paying attention to bodily cues like tension, hesitation, or unease during decisions. Those signals often appear before conscious reasoning, offering early insight if people resist dismissing them as inconvenience. Practicing awareness daily helps prevent fear from quietly solidifying into logic that later feels difficult to untangle.
That moment in the book reminded me of being young, sensing something was wrong long before adults acknowledged the truth. Like your protagonist, I learned early how intuition whispers quietly, even when logic and authority insist everything is fine. So my next question is this: how does early intuition shape adult decision-making when fear and responsibility collide?
Early intuition becomes a compass, guiding adults toward authenticity when they learn to trust signals formed before fear imposed rules. Those early impressions persist, shaping boundaries and reactions, even as responsibility pressures people to override inner knowing in adulthood repeatedly. Reconnecting with intuition requires revisiting those moments, honoring emotion, choosing awareness during consequential decisions with courage consistently.
At this point, Willie, this feels like a therapy session, but don't worry, everyone. The copay is reflection. All jokes aside, this conversation beautifully highlights how stories help us examine fear, truth, and growth with compassion. Before we close, I'd love to ask what conversations you hope this book continues to spark among thoughtful readers everywhere.
My goal was never comfort, but honesty, allowing readers to sit with discomfort and discover insight through reflection. I hope readers pause afterward, reflecting on fear, choice, and truth, and recognize those forces shaping their own lives daily. If the story encourages conversation and self-examination, then it has succeeded beyond suspense or entertainment alone for readers everywhere today.
That intention is powerful, Willie, because stories that linger often become mirrors for readers confronting their own fears and truths. Thank you for sharing your work and insight today, Willie, and for joining us on Books by Barron podcast today.
I'm grateful for spaces like this podcast, where stories open doors to deeper understanding and shared human reflection together here.
Willie, thank you again for this meaningful conversation and for trusting us with the deeper ideas behind your work today. Running in the Dark invites readers to sit with discomfort, question assumptions, and explore truth beyond fear within themselves deeply. Thank you for spending this time with us, reflecting on stories, ideas, and truths that quietly shape our lives together. These conversations matter because they remind us growth begins when we listen closely, question gently, and remain open to change. As you move forward, carry curiosity, courage, and compassion, allowing reflection to guide choices beyond fear in everyday life moments. I'm Isabella Pierce, signing off with gratitude. Until next time on Books by Barron, where thoughtful voices meet meaningful conversations.